In the year 1924, a letter arrived at a New York home that would chill a family to its very core. The letter wasn't just words on paper. It was a confession, a taunt, a promise of horrors that no one could have imagined. It came from a man later known to history as Albert Fish, a man whose face appeared ordinary, whose hands seemed gentle, but whose mind harbored the darkest of obsessions. Albert Fish, the grey man, moved quietly through neighbourhoods, blending in as a harmless, elderly gentleman. He walked with a cane, dressed in neatly pressed suits, a soft smile playing on his lips. Nobody suspected that behind those spectacles, behind that wrinkled facade, lurked a monster. A man who would kidnap children, manipulate them with kindness, and then commit acts so vile that even hardened detectives shuddered. His life was a series of deceptions. He rented rooms under different names, living double lives that no one could penetrate. Friends thought him devout, religious even, unaware that he tortured himself with sadistic rituals and elaborate fantasies. Fish's obsession with children grew from fascination to compulsion. He studied them, memorized their routines, learning when and where he could strike without detection. On one quiet spring afternoon in 1924, a little girl named Grace Budd caught his attention. Grace was just 10 years old, laughing and playing in the sunshine, unaware that the grey man's gaze followed her with chilling precision. Fish befriended her family under the pretense of offering work for the boy he claimed to want to employ. What a liar. What a manipulator. They trusted him, and that trust would be the key that unlocked their nightmare. He invited Grace to come with him to help with a party he claimed to be organising. The family hesitated, but eventually agreed. Grace left with him that day, skipping happily down the street, never imagining she was walking into a meticulously planned trap. Her parents assumed she would return by evening, but the hours stretched and worry turned into panic. Albert Fish led Grace to a secluded house he had rented under another name, a house stripped of humanity. There, the horrors unfolded. Fish used his twisted imagination to satisfy his cravings. He manipulated, threatened, and ultimately murdered Grace. The details, recorded in letters he later sent to her mother, are almost too horrific to recount, yet they exist, coldly typed, calmly describing every act. The grey man had no remorse. None. What kind of monster does that? This was not an impulsive crime. Albert Fish planned meticulously. He observed the neighbourhood for weeks. He watched the family. He memorized routines. And then, when he struck, there was no hesitation, only the execution of his twisted ritual. His ability to mask normalcy made him terrifyingly effective. People described him as a harmless old man, a kindly pensioner, and that was the most dangerous disguise of all. The police were baffled. For months, Grace Budd was simply missing, and Fish continued his quiet existence, blending into the city streets, walking past parents who feared for their children. Yet his obsession did not waver. He kept meticulous notes of his crimes, sending letters that mocked and terrified the families. These letters became the key that led investigators to him, but even then, it was a careful, tense pursuit. Fish was clever, leaving barely a trace, hiding in plain sight. His history was long and disturbing. Fish had a pattern. He targeted children, lured them with promises, and committed unspeakable acts. Each crime added to his legend of terror, yet his outward life remained deceptively calm. He lived in poverty, dressed simply, attended church, spoke softly, but inside, a tempest of depravity raged. Finally, in 1934, the break came. Investigators linked the letters sent to Gracebud's mother to a man in New York. They traced the handwriting, the postage, the subtle hints of his identity. A search of his home revealed clues that confirmed every horrific suspicion. Hidden in his rented rooms were the remnants of his crimes, artifacts, journals, evidence of a mind that had wandered far beyond morality. When confronted, Albert Fish did not deny. He confessed in chilling detail to acts that defy imagination. He spoke with eerie calm about tortures, killings, and manipulations that spanned decades, and the world recoiled. A man who seemed so ordinary, so unassuming, turned out to be one of the most horrifying predators in American history. Albert Fish was arrested, and the trial was a spectacle of horror. Witnesses described the letters, the details, the absolute depravity. The courtroom listened as Fish calmly explained his actions, smiling at times, whispering about divine justifications. But justice, finally, caught up with him. He was sentenced to death, and in 1936, Albert Fish, the Grey Man, was executed. The city exhaled. The nightmare ended. Yet the legacy of terror remains. The letters, the stories, the hidden rooms, the manipulations. Albert Fish is remembered not just for the crimes he committed, but for the chilling reminder that sometimes the most ordinary-looking people can harbour the darkest secrets imaginable. He was arrested and sentenced to death by electrocution in 1936.